You've probably heard the saying, those who can't do, teach. Well, what about the people out there that are teaching you how to create or grow a business that have never even done that themselves? We call these internet gurus. And are these internet gurus really a path to success? Or are they just a scam? Stay tuned as we'll tell you all about internet gurus and give you some information that they probably wish you didn't have. My name is Nick McLean with 4 Pillars Investors. Been in the private equity M&A space for 20 years, and what I can tell you is that no matter what anybody says, unless they've just been incredibly lucky, running a business is not easy. It's very hard to start a business. It's very hard to grow a business. It's very hard to keep that company going for 5-10 years. So for folks to come on the YouTube and various other media telling you that all you have to do is XYZ and you can be making $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month, easy peasy, I'm a little bit skeptical. Now, before I get into the meat of it, one of my standard disclaimers. Now, I know what I'm going to say next is probably going to be very controversial, and a lot of people are just going to probably maybe throw their computers at the wall because of how upset they are when they hear me say this. But what I'm going to tell you is that you actually can't believe everything you read on the internet, but unfortunately, it's true. It's really important to understand that because of how effective these internet gurus are. Now, what exactly is a quote-unquote internet guru? It's a term that I use to describe these folks that you see on YouTube or X or whatever social media you use, talking about how you can make a lot of money anywhere from social media itself to buying businesses to doing this to doing that. Now, what I will tell you is that oftentimes there's really the appearance of high levels of success. Now, is that the case? In some circumstances, sure. But you got to remember, these internet gurus, just like any other type of profession, if you want to call it that, there's going to be a huge level of variability. There are going to be some folks out there that are really good. There's going to be some folks out there that are really bad. And most of the folks are probably going to be right there in the middle. But again, this internet guru concept is the idea that there is this easy, repeatable way to make money that anyone can follow, anyone can do, and they will be successful. Another feature of internet gurus is that there are low barriers to entry, meaning it's very easy to position yourself as a internet guru and super successful. You just got to do a few things. Well, one of them is you could go rent a Ferrari, you could rent a mansion, you could have some models walking around. All of those things are going to lead people to think that you're ultra successful, even though you might be driving a Chevy and living in a 2-bedroom house. Nothing wrong with those things. But again, you're not going to establish yourself as an internet guru unless you're driving like a Lamborghini or Ferrari. I think that's part of the problem, to be honest with you. Back in the day, there were also these various get-rich schemes and whatnot, but at least the barriers to entry were higher then. They would need national advertising, spots that were actually showing on TV and the budget to support those. You need to host a seminar in a hotel and actually have tens, hundreds of people show up and give that presentation, as opposed to just making a video while you're sitting in your bedroom or your garage or whatever. So for those reasons, that's a big reason why there's this proliferation of internet gurus, is because of the low barriers to entry. Now, when you look at these internet gurus, there are several different phenomena going on as to why they might be effective. I've done a video on the status quo bias. You might realize that I really have an interest in understanding different cognitive biases. And part of what's going on here are 3 different cognitive biases. One is the availability heuristic. Think about Facebook or Instagram and think about all the pictures of people you see going on vacations and doing cool things and just, all sorts of this really amazing life. Well, what happens is that those memories, because you see so many of them, you see so many vacation pics, you see so many success pics or whatever you want to call them, those memories become more available, if you will, to your mind. And because you're more easily assess those memories and those recollections, it tends to color how you view the world. So because it's so easy to remember those, you think that everybody's always going on vacation And since you're not posting those pics of you going on vacation, you're not as successful, or going even further, you're a loser or whatever. So that's one example of the availability heuristic and how it relates to the various psychological tools that these internet gurus might use. Similar to the vacation post is what is called the self-presentation bias. The idea really is to further an image that you want others to have of you. So as it relates to those vacation posts, you're always posting about, hey, this vacation was so amazing, I'm so lucky to go on it. But what you don't see is that your kids cried half the time, and you were just having to go get Jack Daniels or whatever to make it through the vacation, even though you got like 2 great pictures that made it seem like it was the best vacation ever. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but again, as it relates to these internet gurus, that's important to keep in mind that there's bias out there called the self-presentation bias that leads us to post more positive posts and information than negative, and also posting in a way that isn't really reflective of what we're going through. The third bias that I think is very interesting is the authority bias. Here is where we tend to place a higher value whenever we think the person talking is an authority. So if we hear people say they've worked at McKinsey or Bain or Goldman Sachs or any of these really well-known and well-respected companies, we instantly give them a little bit more credibility than if they worked at some company without the big name. And so because they have that credibility, then they can start saying things that might or might not be as widely believed, because they've mentioned those big names of McKinsey or Goldman or whatever. It's not just that. Sometimes you can establish that authority by saying you have a lot of experience, or definitely in the case of internet gurus, I've made all this money, and because I've made all this money, you should listen to me. So those are the 3 biases: the availability heuristic, the self-presentation bias, and the authority bias. As it relates to internet gurus, I think the first point to understand is that most of these guys or ladies are very effective marketers. If they're not effective marketers, then you probably wouldn't see them on YouTube or Instagram or X or wherever. In order to have the reach, in order to get the impressions that they have, they've got to be effective at it. Why are they effective? Because they're drawing on a lot of the biases that we just talked about. They're painting this picture or this image of success. They're painting this image of, I'm doing all these cool things. They're doing this image of, you should listen to me because I have everything that you should want and you should be able to achieve if you just had a roadmap to doing this. And hey, by the way, I'm here with that roadmap. Listen to me and everything will be great. On top of those cognitive biases, there's another trick that they use, which is essentially finding a common enemy. The internet gurus know who they're talking to. They might be talking to people that don't have something or do have something. Because they don't or do have that, they feel bad or their self-confidence is hurt because of that. So for example, there's a wide swath of internet gurus that target people that don't have a college degree. Their message is, listen, you can be more successful than somebody that has a college degree. You just got to follow my plan, and boom, you're going to be laughing at all those people that went to college and wasted all that money. Now that's great if the plan works, but again, it's drawing on people's insecurity, I guess, about not having a college degree in order to get them to buy their product or service. Another common one is relating the 9 to 5 as being the modern form of slavery almost. I can't even fathom how you could make that comparison. But again, that's the imagery that some of these internet gurus will use in order to create strong emotions on the part of the viewers. They're using those strong emotions to persuade them that there's another path or another option that will lead them to success and riches that they deserve, but they just haven't been able to achieve yet. Now, I mentioned that I think internet gurus are effective marketers, but I also get emails like this. This is a course about how to be more effective at social selling using different social media platforms. Honestly, I think this would be a great workshop to attend However, this guy, I'm sorry, he's just not as effective of a marketer as the internet gurus are. Personally, I would be much more inclined to go to this workshop than listen to Internet Guru. This guy doesn't paint a common enemy. He doesn't have any Lamborghinis or Ferraris in the backdrop. He doesn't have any models or huge houses that lend a air of success to him. And so for that reason, he's just not in the same league as these internet gurus. And that's unfortunate because I think a lot of people would probably learn more by going to this workshop than on a lot of different internet guru type sales platforms. Regardless of whether these internet gurus are effective marketers or not, I typically tend to think of them in terms of two tiers. Tier 1 is the group of people that actually have not achieved any business success outside of their internet guru business. So essentially, they're selling a course or they're selling this or that, and that's the only way they make money. They've never actually been able to achieve success on their own. Tier 2 are those people that have actually used the methods that they're trying to sell you, and they have achieved success. As it relates to Tier 2, the folks that have achieved success, just because they have achieved success doesn't mean it's replicable. Maybe there are circumstances that allow them to be successful. Maybe it's geography, maybe it's timing, maybe it's this or that. 1,000 different variables go into whether or not you will be successful. And just because one path led one person to be able to achieve success, that does not mean that anybody following this roadmap or this plan will also be able to achieve success. So we have some methods that are replicable, some that aren't. Regardless, I mean, there are a lot of ways to make money. There's real estate, there's general business. I mean, I wish I knew more of them, to be honest with you. Even if the strategy that Internet Guru is proposing is in fact replicable, then let's just give them the benefit of the doubt and say that, yes, your strategy to make money following this roadmap is legitimate, and if executed effectively, it could lead to a successful outcome. But there was a key point that I added in there, and that's execution. Strategy is important, but so is execution. Great example to bring in a sports analogy. I watch a lot of American football, and even if you have a great strategy, a great play lined up, if your receiver drops the ball or if your running back drops the ball, the strategy is worthless because the execution was terrible. That's why it's so hard to actually be successful in business, because you got to put the whole puzzle together. Not just strategy, not just execution, it's both. Well, I'll tell you that there is a subset of internet gurus that talk about buying boring businesses or just buying small businesses in general as a means to become rich or make a lot of money or whatever. I really cannot argue with that. I think that business ownership is, in fact, one of the greatest paths in order to generate wealth. However, it's very hard to buy a business. I've talked to countless people throughout the years that have tried to buy a business, and many of those people haven't. It's very challenging and it takes a long time. And also, there are a lot of factors that are outside of your control. You might be doing everything correctly and you still can't get a deal closed, or the deal dies for whatever reasons. For that reason alone, it's just very difficult to buy a business. And I think that when you listen to internet gurus, not only do they make it sound so easy because there's so many businesses out there and wow, this was so easy for me, you should do it too, et cetera, et cetera. On top of that, there's this implication that these boring businesses and buying a business is almost risk-free. Not the case. There are a lot of businesses that have been around for a long time, a new owner comes in and the business tanks. Why is that? Well, I mean, there's a multitude of reasons. The point here, though, is that even if you do buy a business, or even if you decide you want to, just because there's this portrayal that buying a business is relatively safe in terms of preserving your capital, I would make an argument that buying a business is in fact very risky. Now, there are great rewards associated with that, but in this efficient market that we're in, if you want higher rewards, you're probably going to have to take on more risk, and I think you need to have open eyes going into the business buying process. Well, buying a business is hard. Do you know what else is hard? starting a business. It's also hard to keep that business going for 5 years. I mentioned numerous times that only 50% of businesses make it past the 5-year mark. Well, as it relates to a lot of internet gurus, essentially what they're saying is you need to start a business. This is the type of business that I think you should start. And here's the path that you need to follow in order to make this business successful. I appreciate the coaching, but it just implies this ease with which you can start a business and run it. Is this the type of business that is going to generate $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month or more? Or is this the type of business that's going to generate $200, $300, $500? Now, that's great if your goal is $200 to $500 or whatever. You're trying to supplement your primary income. But for most people that would want this to be their primary income, $500 is not going to cut it in this environment. And finally, there's one thing that the internet gurus are not going to talk about, and that's going to be how they relate to other people. I've been reading a lot in the newspaper recently about how the new Starbucks of CEO is getting this enormous pay package, getting all these perks and whatnot. That guy's 50 years old. I'm 44. I'd bet you a lot of money that in 5 to 6 years, I'm not going to be getting a call from Starbucks and them saying that they want me to be their next CEO. So what I'm trying to say here is that there are a lot of people out there that are far more successful than I am. However, the thing that I'm not doing also is saying, I've got the plan to make everybody rich. I do not have it all figured out. I'm in a place right now where I'm doing what I love. I have time to spend with my family whenever I need to. For example, I just took the kids to school today on the first day, and that was really enjoyable. But you know what? I'm also not going to achieve the success of Brian Niccol at Starbucks. So as it relates to these internet gurus, you think about the image that they're trying to portray and whether or not that is realistic with what you think is actually going to happen in your circumstance or in others.